Welcome to Garden Fork Radio. You're here with Rick and Eric. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Eric. And the holiday season is upon us.
Yeah, I have to get the Christmas cards going. I think I'm going to try the block printing Christmas card thing again.
That'd be great. You need to hurry up, though. That's kind of a slow process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not quite ready for the Christmas thing yet.
All mine's done pretty much. Of course, I think as you get older, you just you skip all the cheap plastic crap from China. And this year, it's a tradition now on my birthday because I don't need anything really. Right. There are lots of things I might want, but I don't need much. And on my birthday, which is actually 31 December, I sit down and I make a list of groups and organizations I'd like to give to. And She Who Must Be Obeyed and I work up a list and agree on an amount. And then we make an emolument for my birthday every year. Instead of me receiving gifts, we send something out.
Perfect. A follow to that is one of my neighbors. I consider him a friend. I see him at the general store. He was having a heart attack in his home, and our little town has no services. And so the volunteer ambulance from the neighboring town flew in. A volunteer medical technician immediately said, "Your husband's having a heart attack. I'm taking him to this hospital. You can't ride in the ambulance. I'll meet you down there. We don't have time to talk." And they saved his life. And Wow. They do it as a volunteer. So I don't usually give that town ambulance crew money. I usually there's two towns near us that have ambulance crews. And I thought that the other town served our entire town, and it doesn't. They split the town in half. So,
and probably depends on who's busy and who's not at the time.
And they saved the guy's life. They went 85 miles an hour down the road to the hospital, which is about 30 miles away. And the surgeons were waiting. They put stents in his veins and near his heart and saved his life. And he's back driving his car already.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear.
So when the volunteer ambulance corps or the volunteer fire people, just punt them. If you have some money, punt them some money. So.
Well, and the other side of that is if you're living in those communities, you all depend on each other. And I know around here it's the tradition. If you move into a community, you're expected to either contribute money or contribute time.
Yes.
And I know a lot of the smaller communities. I'm particularly familiar with Duck, North Carolina, down just south of us on the coast. When you move in and you start a business or something, they show up and say, are you interested in law enforcement or fire department? And they have both roving night patrols that they split up, and they had the fire department and ambulance corps. And so when you depend on each other like that, it's really it makes for good citizenship.
There we go. Speaking of good citizenship, everyone knows the election has happened recently, and there's been a lot of articles in the news about fake news. And I depend on Rick partly through his Twitter feed for interesting news articles. So I just wanted to hear from Rick about some sources of news that he found reliable in this world of when you see links in Google search, you don't know if they're legitimate or not,
Yeah. Boy, the best way to stay informed is just to be informed, to read widely, to listen to all sides. And quite frankly, I spend a lot of time listening to the CBC up in Canada, the BBC in Britain, Radio Deutsche Welle in the Netherlands, and the Australian Broadcasting Network, just to get a more of a distant view on what's going on in the world and on us, and getting different points of view. And that's really kind of the secret. My rule of thumb, however, is that if it takes several hundred people to cover up an event of some sort, and it's done, and sometimes tens of thousands of people over a long period of time, often multi-generational, it's probably not a real event. Most people blab their heads off as soon as they get involved. It used to be what the SEALs did. The Navy SEALs was kept completely quiet. And then after the Osama bin Laden raid, there were like 4 or 5 books from Navy SEALs claiming to do this and claiming to do that. And so all that propriety of state secrets and keeping quiet are really kind of gone by the wayside in this age. But mostly what I do is don't allow myself to get wrapped up in news.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean sit in front of the TV or listen to the same radio station hour after hour after hour after hour. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to the NPR top of the hour news once a day, unless something is really going on, and particularly if it's something in my area that might affect me. For the most part, I don't pay attention to the news till the end of the week, and I like roundup shows, roundtable news roundup shows, because you get enough distance from the event to actually find out if it's true. Also, they bring some structure to it about history and how we got here and that kind of thing that you won't get just immediately. And then you also get several different points of view. And so I like roundtables where, the Diane Rehm show on Fridays, there you have 2 hours, 1 hour of national, 1 hour of international news. I know I kind of stuck on NPR, but there's Washington Week in Review, those kinds of things. But just read widely and read lots of different kinds of views and ask yourself, is this true? There have been a couple of really unfortunate incidents just in the last few days where fake news has gotten people, put them in danger, but also caused a lot of trouble for the individuals who weren't particularly curious.
Yeah, part of me just kind of shakes my head at that, but then I have 2 friends who we were talking just near the election, and they were like, well, I didn't know who to vote for, so I thought I would search the web and see what I could learn about Hillary Clinton, and I found out she was a criminal. And then the other person said, I couldn't find anything good on the internet about Hillary Clinton. And I was like, well, where did you look? So, just depending on if you search on Facebook or Google, there are sites out there that have managed to gain on the algorithm with information that isn't, I would say, either not true or not completely true. So it was it kind of showed to me the power that someone can have if they're just persuasive enough. And it's really easy to build a WordPress website and just put stuff up there. I could say Eric from Garden Fork has webbed feet, And
you might.
And if I kept on saying it enough with enough outrageous headlines, I think people might start to believe it. So
yeah, I refuse to live in a fact-free world. People need to back up what they say with evidence, things that you can point to that we can read and touch. I don't engage with people who refuse to engage on facts.
Yeah.
We can have a disagreement about the interpretation of facts. But just, you need to bring real facts to the table. And I don't mind. In fact, I enjoy arguing with people and trying to reach some sort of middle ground with them. There are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that have a lot to complain about. And I personally, I feel that. I've always thought that, what was it Jefferson said in his first inaugural address, I think, a difference of opinion does not represent a difference in principle, and that we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to go about it. And I'm certainly willing to have my mind changed. I am a son of the Enlightenment, and particularly the Scottish Enlightenment, as far as my education and reading and just tilt. But I'm open to argument, but it has to be real argument about real things and not just spurious stuff that people make up to make another group look bad.
I actually like the NPR app. I've kind of stopped listening to the radio. Um, but the NPR app actually has a lot of news that doesn't make it anywhere else. And yeah, some of it is human interest, but a lot of it is science and technology stuff that I find fascinating. They're talking about this new telescope that they're going to put up into space that's bigger and better than the Hubble, and it has to unfold itself up in space.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
And I kind of doubt that made the NPR newscast, which I just can't listen to anymore. um, but their app is really good. And there's a couple other news apps. Consumer Reports has a sister site, and I actually get their email newsletter called Consumerist.
Right.
And they're like, there's just stuff out there like this child's toy caches audio tracks on a defense contractor's web server, and you're like, oh. But they took the time to figure that out. And I'm like, oh, that's violating a couple of laws. There's one called the COPA Act, which is dealing with minors on the internet.
Right.
But it's just stuff like that. So there you go. I just felt we had to talk about that. And Rick, I think, is a great source. Also, the PBS NewsHour, it's boring, but man, they're like straight down the middle. They have people from the left and right on as opinion makers or journalists. And they also have a ton of women journalists on that show. I've noticed a lot more than the regular networks do.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah, although I do mourn the passing of Gwen Ifill.
Neat lady.
Yeah.
Definitely a trailblazer, really
liked her. But, there are, unlike you, I don't find it boring. I find policy discussions really interesting. And if you're terrifically interested in the policy, Vox, VOX, has two podcasts. One is called The Weeds, which really goes into deep policy discussion in the weeds.
Yeah.
On a lot of different topics. And the other is a Vox podcast called The Ezra Klein Show, which is interviews with policymakers. And there's just a lot of stuff that you need to consider. Whenever someone says it's black or white, yes or no, my back gets up. I just I don't believe that about most events, and particularly now, 200 years rather into this nation's history, 225 years. There's a lot of history. There are a lot of twists and turns, and there are a lot of different things to think about and consider. So it's a complicated country. It's a complicated populace. We live in very complicated times, and we live in an international world. And so you have to think about a lot of different things, not just one narrow sliver, one little event.
Well, speaking of not narrow, there's some really nice new iTunes reviews of Garden Fork Radio I thought I would read.
How nice.
Yeah.
Who did them? What do you got?
Wackomac is this person's name. The title is An Informative Way to Relax, 5 stars. I found Garden Fork Radio by accident, which I love. That's how it usually happens. I found the podcast and videos much like CBS's Sunday Morning. A low-key, easygoing podcast. To go along with dog stories, cooking, or just reflections of everyday life, there are wonderful DIY segments. That in itself is enough to make it a must-listen podcast. But wait, there's more. A good amount of first-hand commentary on beekeeping, product reviews, and suggestions of, wonderful websites or YouTube channels that is very beneficial. A great podcast.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wackomac.
Thinking about dog things, we have 2 fairly new rescues, and they're both little terriers, and the terriers means hard-headed. And we have had trouble getting them to actually be controllable on a leash. And eventually I broke down and bought the Gentle Leader, which is not a muzzle. It's just a head harness halter that has really worked wonders for a hard-headed dog, and it's made both of them a joy to walk. It comes with a DVD because there's some training that has to go into it, because that's not natural for a dog to have a line around its muzzle, and particularly they seem to be able to see it and that's what really annoys them. They can see it out of the corner of their eyes, across their muzzle. And so there's some training that goes into it, but it has made these two dogs that used to pull and yap and cause all kinds of commotion into good dog citizens. So
The Labradors are walked on gentle leaders when we're in the city, and it is amazing because they're actually fairly aggressive, even though they're these supposed to be gentle yellow labs. They're like the mean girl gang, you know. Especially Charlie Pup. And I put these on, and it was suggested at the pet store. And there is a video. There's also some YouTube videos as well, if you lose the DVD. And
right.
man, what a difference! And now I see people that have the pinch collar or the collar with the little spiky things, you know, and they're wrestling with the dog. And I'm like, just get this, just get. And I'm usually with my dog, so I'm trying to yell at them, get the gentle leader, you know.
Right, right.
They don't like it. The Labradors, whenever I stop to talk to someone, they try and paw it off themselves. But if you put it on right, it's probably going to be tighter than you think it should be. But man, I can walk the dogs, and I'm holding the leashes with two little pinky fingers.
Yes.
And they still
Yes.
pull a little bit, but I can walk down the street and they're not trying to grab food out of the gutter. When other dogs come by, we do get out of the way. You know, we don't brush right by them. I move. But man, they don't pull my back out anymore.
Right. Yeah. It is just a wonder if you have a hard-headed dog that's gotten used to jerking you around and taking you where it wants to go. A gentle leader is it's a gentle way and a humane way to control your dog without spike collars and all those things that I see those all the time.
Yeah. We have another review by Carl from October 26th. It's 5 stars. It says, I love the variety of topics and guests. Eric says Garden Fork is an eclectic DIY podcast and he is spot on. I love the variety of guests and topics he covers. DIY, cooking, beekeeping, and gardening. Eric has a great group of friends that do a great job of keeping things fun and informative. Solo shows are great too. Yay. A definite addition to anyone's car commute. Thanks and keep up the great work.
It's terrific. Thank you so much.
That's cool. We also have some emails. Should we read our emails or what else were we going to talk? What was on our list?
I forget, but let me do this one about the tomatoes because this is my favorite topic. Hi, Eric and Rick. I had a great success with those University of Florida Garden Gem tomatoes you talked about on the podcast last winter. They produced up until frost, and even though here on the East Coast we had some hot spells that shut down my heirlooms, I sent University of Florida another $10 recently for a pack of garden gems, and they include seeds for the Garden Treasure, another hybrid they grow that's larger than the Garden Gem. Thanks for the podcast, and thanks for turning me on to that seed source. Regards, Marcus in the D.C. suburbs.
Yay.
And this is the Klee Center, Klee, at the University of Florida. And they are producing some wonderful tomatoes. I had this year both Garden Gem and Garden Treasure in my garden, and they produce so prolifically that we were sick of tomatoes by the end of the year. And we had our first frost just last week and killed off the vines, and I pulled them up. But this is the best tomato I have ever grown. And they were specifically grown, one, to be disease resistant, but two, to have real taste. And the Garden Gem is a little larger than a dollar coin. And the Garden Treasure are big slicing tomatoes now, and they're terrific. And if you would like some, look up the Klee Center, Klee, at the University of Florida, and you can make a small contribution, $10 or so, and they will send you seeds that you can keep in your refrigerator until next spring, and then you will be able to plant and have some great tomatoes.
The influence you have. That's great, Rick.
Well, I just happened to find them. So, but yeah, I'm always up for a new variety that grows well and that's disease resistant.
And this year you said it was your best tomato year ever.
Yeah, I've never had tomatoes like this. Of course, this year I did something a little different. I put down a weed block, but it was a woven weed block so that air and water could get through. and then I put drip irrigation on top of it, and then used the torch to burn holes in the weed block for the tomato holes, and then put the cages down through it. And so all the diseases that were in the soil, and most of the blights that tomatoes suffer are actually soil-borne diseases, never got a chance to splash up onto the leaves during rain. And because of that, and because of these new varieties, it was just a bumper crop of tomatoes.
Yay. That's
Yeah,
great.
finally, I've had so many disappointments.
We have another email from David, and of course, it will be answered by Rick, but I'll read it. Hi, Eric. On a podcast, a conversation between you and Rick, he mentioned he just traveled to pick up a dog or two from a rescue. I thought, well, that's cool. So I contacted a rescue, and they had no clue what I was talking about. Can at some point Rick revisit that topic and give more information about what exactly he's doing in reference to relocating these animals? I'm in Texas. Rick will understand that this could be a foreign concept to shelters or rescues in Texas. That's from David, where he's in a town where the West begins.
In Weatherford, I grew up in Lubbock, so we weren't that far apart. I will do some more research on specific sources. The idea, though, is you really need to have a relationship with a rescue group.
A specific breed sometimes.
Well, sometimes I started off in Cairn Terrier Rescue, and they were very reluctant to let me at first transport their animals because we have a problem, particularly with small dogs that can be used as bait, and they're good lab dogs. And I mean, lab is in laboratory, not Labrador. They're good lab dogs. People would shortstop our transports and sell the dogs to a lab or to someone who is baiting dogs. And so you have to develop a trust with a group to get a reputation within it. And I guess here it's unique in that we have Norfolk is kind of at the bottom of a very long cul-de-sac in a way. There's no traffic through here. And so I had developed relationship through the terrier groups with other groups in my neighborhood to get dogs out of this region up to DC, over to Philly. I've been as far as Chicago taking dogs. So it's just a matter of getting those contacts and getting a trust relationship going. The other thing is that, transporting dogs is not new. We have a group of pilots, private pilots, or actually commercial pilots that fly small twin-engine aircraft for corporations and whatnot that move dogs for us all over the country. We have, we'll volunteer occasionally. If you're taking a trip on an airline, we'll ask you to carry a dog as, if it's a small dog, as cockpit or as a cabin baggage, and transport it that way. And then our group will refund you the money it costs to get the dog there. So there are a number of ways. My little Darcy was actually in a kill shelter down in Houston. And somebody pulled him out just at the last minute. He was on like his last 2 or 3 days. Pulled him out, put him into care and rescue. A pilot flew him up to Dallas. A family relayed him, several families relayed him up to Chicago on car trips. Sometimes this takes 2 or 3 months. And then I drove to Chicago to pick him up. And on the way to Chicago, I dropped off 3 dogs and picked up 4 more coming back, and distribute them to people. So it's a matter of joining rescue groups. Usually Facebook's a good way to get involved with them.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, all of them have a Facebook presence now. Once you kind of become known and associated with a group, particularly if they have done background checks on you because you've rescued one of their dogs or something, then it's pretty easy to pick up these gigs. But the reason a lot of people are reluctant is specifically because we have people that are in the business of short-stopping our dogs, and that's not a good deal.
No. Well, it's cool that he's interested. I forwarded Rick your information, and maybe you guys can figure something out. That would be great.
That'd be terrific. Completely
different topic we can talk about for a minute here. I have to go drill in my neighbor's brick wall in a minute here. So,
oh dear.
They got a shelf that they want to hang up, and they're like, "Eric, do you know how to do this?" I'm like, "Well, there's a Garden Fork video about this." But I got a new weather station. a new personal weather station that's hooked up to Weather Underground. So I want to thank Tyler from, I'm blanking on his company name. Uh-oh. Allison House.
Allison House,
Severe
yeah.
Weather Data Company, and a good friend of Garden Fork. He was just at a Waffle House, and I was kind of jealous of that. But he sent me a very high end weather station, probably 6 or 8 years ago, and it's worked really well. And the weather finally took its toll on the solar panels and transmitters. And it was to the point where it would cost more to fix it than it would be to replace it. So I actually took the broken one and I put it on eBay for parts. I don't know if anyone will want it. I just put it up for $1 and said, look, I'd be happy for someone to take this for parts. But the new one, I'll report back soon. I don't want to endorse it quite yet. I want to make sure the thing works for a while, but we'll talk about that in an upcoming podcast.
Which one did you get?
I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, I asked the hard question. The reason I asked is my Davis unit. I think we talked about this recently. Kind of crapped out. Same problem. The solar panel doesn't work. It only runs on batteries, and I have been putting those little 123A batteries into the thing like once a week. It just goes through them, the outside portion. And there's a new Kickstarter for a weather station called Bloom Sky, BLOOMSKY.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I looked at that. You showed me that.
Yeah, and I ordered one. It will be here for Christmas, I think. So it'll be a gift from She Who Must Be Obeyed that I bought myself. And I'm going to put it out, and it also hooks into the Weather Underground. Unlike the Davis that has an instrument head that's radio controlled inside the house, this is only on your iOS or Android device that you can look at it. But it looks interesting, and it was cheaper to buy this unit than it was to replace the Davis piece outside that had gone bad.
Yeah, the Davis is pretty high end. The one I got was about $150, and it's plug and play. I just want to make sure the thing works because it's their transmitters were looking on their help pages. It looked like they had some problems with software last year, and it seemed mine was worked right out of the box. So I just want to make sure it works for a while. So
sure,
there you go.
Well, it's only responsible, but I love weather machines. I have a pilot's license. I used to sail. I just love weather and its permutations, and I have always been, and as a gardener, just interested in weather. So I almost have to have a weather machine around me somewhere.
Cool. There's a lot more to talk about, but both Rick and I need to run, but we wanted to get a show out, and I get emails a lot. And by the way, my email went down for like a week, I think. I moved my email to another machine. And I couldn't get the IMAP. It's called Secure Socket Layer IMAP to work correctly. I was ready to call Tyler and Radio Mike and like, would you just fix this thing, So if you sent me an email, if I did not reply to you, please send it again. It's radio@gardenfork.tv because a bunch of stuff got lost. So
yeah. Going back, maybe this is a good place to end, but going back to where we began, talking about news sources and fake news and that kind of thing. One of the biggest things I have discovered is that people really don't listen to each other anymore. And there are a lot of people on both sides that have good arguments. Sometimes they don't express them the best way, or they don't have at hand the references that maybe you think they ought to. But many people at least have a decent argument, and they bear listening, and we're all in this together. Try to take a moment to really understand where people are coming from, and then make your decisions off that. Anytime you get, I find that anytime I have a knee-jerk reaction to anything, most of the time I'm wrong.
Yes.
And I just like to remember that. It's always like whenever I say, boy, I'm being run over, I need to take a stand, and I'll take that stand about something, and it's the one time that I'm really wrong. And so I've learned not to be so stiff-necked about that kind of thing. I don't know if we'll talk again before Christmas. When well, this is the 8th. We may talk again.
No, we'll talk again. Yeah.
And you've had some. Oh, I really enjoyed your video on the radiant heat, the water radiant heat that you put into the concrete.
Oh, what fun that was. It works
Yeah, I bet
it's
so.
amazing how warm it is.
Yeah. We did the same thing with an electric grid under our tile in the 3 bedrooms. And it's worked out very well for us as well. The heat is where you want it. I'm sitting here now, my feet on a toasty warm floor, and then the warm air is rising around me. And that's a lot better than having your blower constantly blowing dirty, moldy, dusty, hot air on you. So I'm really in favor of radiant heat.
So the radiant floor heating and the Faraday shield around your entire house, and you're happy.
You're right. You're right. I do live in a Faraday cage. I can't in the backyard. I can't even get the Wi-Fi signal. I'm going to have to put in a transponder out on the one of those plug-in modules.
Yeah.
To get the signal out to the backyard.
The copper wire's too thick around your house.
All
right, everyone.
Okay, my friend.
Thank you.
It's great talking to you.
All right, everyone. So make it a great day. It's radio@gardenfork.tv, and enjoy your day. See ya.
Okay, bye-bye.
Garden Fork's theme music is used under license from uniquetracks.com.